Fever won their first game of the season, but there is still a whole lot of work that needs to be done there. Caitlyn Clark, how is she adjusting to the pros? Who stood out so far and whose stock has maybe fallen a little bit? All that and more today on Locked On Women's Basketball.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. I am Talia Goodman, your host. This is actually my first time doing this today, but I cover the Indiana Fever for the Next. I've covered National Women's Basketball for the past year and a half, and I'm here with our guest for the day, Tony East, who has been covering the Indiana Fever for forever. He also covers the Pacers, who, unfortunately, may be done with that job soon for the year, but we're lucky enough to have him here today. We're talking all things Indiana Fever, which of course includes Caitlyn Clark. Thanks for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Remember that Locked On Women's Basketball is brought to you by everyone at The Next, a place where we cover women's basketball 24/7 and tell the stories that need to be told every day. Subscribe now to support the staff at The Next. It's $9 a month or $72 a year, and you can find us at thenexthoops.com. On today's show, we're going to dive into Caitlyn Clark starting the WNBA because that is what everyone wants to hear about, right? Then we're going to talk about expectations for the Fever going forward, if they've met them, if they've surpassed them. I know they've only got one win, so maybe not surpassed, but we'll talk about that, and then we'll play a game of stock up, stock down. Tony, we got to talk about Caitlyn Clark here first. She's got all the hype heading into her. She's now played 7 games in the WNBA. What do you think? Has she kind of met your expectations of how you thought she'd be doing right now?
I would say met, yes. I don't know what the perfect word is to describe it. People would say roller coaster. I don't know if it's even that. So I think that there was obviously, as you know, a lot of buzz and hype about what this would look like. And I saw last year a preseason game, Aliyah Boston's first home preseason game, and Tierra McCowan just gave her fits, right? And that is how the W is. The best player in college always goes pro, and it's a new level, and it's higher, and it's different. So my expectations for Caitlyn are probably a little lower than everyone's. So that maybe is why my answer is met, because the turnovers have been high, over 5 per game, her biggest, and she has admitted it after several games as her biggest critic, and she's a perfectionist, that it's too high. But lately, especially, figuring out how to get her shot off, right? That was a big problem earlier for her in these games. This team, she took 9 shots. I believe you were there in their home opener. It's just teams are swarming her. And so she's figuring out how to get her shots off. She's figuring out, okay, I need to go a little farther to the side to open up these pocket passes in the pros because these players are faster and have longer arms. Oh, okay, that adjustment's there. Here's how I need to cut when I pass. That's not something she did very much in college. You've seen those progressions happen really fast, which I think bodes well for how her season will progress. But in terms of how she's looked so far, good. Her passing has exceeded my expectations, but the turnovers have been a little much, and the shooting percentages, even she would admit, are lower than she would have expected of herself. So I would say met, but I'm probably closer to the slightly under than slightly over so far.
Have you seen kind of expectations from fans and even some, local media maybe shift? Because I know heading into this season, expectations were so high that there was no chance she could meet them, right? There was no chance. People didn't really understand what the W was all about. They've watched college basketball this year, the past few years, but they didn't really understand how tough it is to adjust. Have you seen those expectations from others shift a little bit?
Yes, and I felt bad, trying not to be a jerk before the season, but a lot of media locally, who didn't cover the W before, just didn't get how different it would be. We're 20-9 is a reasonable. I'm no, that'd be great. That would be exceptional. No, and maybe she gets there, but it's just not how it goes. And I think the reality check has come already for a lot of people there that she's, there's a lot of work to do in the pros, and that's just how it is. So I don't. There's no way to say that without being a jerk, right? People know of her what they know of her, but Kelsey Mitchell has shot it better than her so far, and they've gotten good passing from others. She's fitting into the team and figuring out how all these guard actions work. So I don't even know what the right way to answer that is. Like, I think the reset was needed, and I think that their record has made that happen for everybody more so than her individual play. Like, in their only win, she had these dazzling shots to seal it. So, and her passing's been unbelievable, even with the turnovers baked in there. So I think that has happened, and it needed to, because I wouldn't say the hype was out of control. Like, she's popular for a reason, right? People want to watch her play. She's very good and exciting, but the W is a whole new level, like way higher than what she was playing in last year, and we're seeing what that looks like.
And you mentioned it before, she's her biggest critic, right? Like, she is
God, yes.
into the game, and she knows what she's doing after every game. She's the first one to get into like the technicalities of everything, right? How have you seen her adjust in that way and kind of take ownership for it and realize how she needs to improve? And how much have you seen tangible improvement from what she's kind of said?
Yeah, her and Aliyah are both kind of like this, where they are their own biggest critics in terms of their mistakes. And like, it's so easy after a game when you like they beat the Sparks and she was 4 for 14, even though Caitlyn had these crazy great shots at the end. And, she's going to look back at that game and go, well, dang, I missed 10 times and I had these turnovers early in the games. And like, it's really hard for players like that. Aliyah, again, is like this too, to go, well, I made all these great plays doing this, like my passes to Temi Fagbenle over the top changed the game, and like the defense has to worry about how they're getting back in transition, and that opens up stuff up for me and Kelsey. Like, they are so baked into their own mistakes. Like, I cover the Pacers too. Tyrese Halliburton's like this too. They think about 2 plays that they messed up on more than 5 plays that they got right, and that is good long term. Like, if you drill that into yourself, you will be better in 5 years than if you do the opposite. But it's really hard when you're a rookie to think that way, because you're a rookie in the pros for the first time. Like, you're learning a lot of new stuff on the fly. You have a whole new team. You have a whole new system. You have a new coach. It's a new league. You're traveling way more. I think she's already lost more this season than at Iowa last year. I might be one loss off, but like, it's all new. It's all new emotions. It's all new everything. So she has to come in stride and kind of learn. Like, she uses this phrase a lot, and this was a big story with Aliyah last year about giving herself grace, right? And that's true of every perfectionist. But at the same time, I think it's good for her to be her biggest critic, right? That's how you watch the tape, you see what you messed up, you see how you can fix it, you talk with your team about it and get better. Like, that's naturally how this is going to go. And so, yeah, they're 1-6, and she's had some clunky moments along the way. The whole team has, but I think they'll be better for it long term, even if, every presser is, yeah, this play was wrong and this pass was wrong and I threw the ball over the gym. It's just how it's going to be for maybe this whole season, maybe just 20 games. We'll see. But I like that reality. I think that's correct.
For sure. And then it is a little too early to say. I'm going to ask you this anyway. It's a little too early to say, right? But what is the ceiling for Caitlyn Clark in the W? Because we saw she had none in college. She had no ceiling, obviously. But what do you expect from her this year, at the end of this year? What do you expect from her in 5 years? Like, what are your thoughts on where she can go?
Yeah, it's like the thing that will, I think, be the biggest requirement of her reaching whatever her perceived ceiling is how her off-ball game evolves, right? Like, at Iowa, dominated the ball for good reason. 2-man game with whatever their big was over the years as it shifted from year to year. It was amazing by the end of the year and crisp, but, for good reason, dominated the ball. In the pros, there's going to be merit to someone else. Right now, it's Kelsey Mitchell. Maybe it will be for a long time. Also having reps. And, like, Caitlyn gives it up a lot and isn't like a gifted mover yet. I think she will be yet. And she's evolving her pick and roll chemistry with all these bigs, Temi, NaLyssa, Aliyah. So her ceiling, to me, I don't know exactly how to say this, but is just like maybe the best scorer in the W, because if you can shoot with her range, like, no one currently in the league has that range ceiling. Right now, she does not have the best range in the league, right? But I think as a ceiling, she has that. And if you are a threat from everywhere, you have to be guarded everywhere. And so that means if you're good at moving or you're good at creating your own shot, you're going to be one of, if not the best scorer. She's not there yet. And her passing obviously makes it all possible, because defense have to pay attention to other players at all times too. So that's how she creates her own space. But I think her ceiling as one of, if not the best scorers in the league, is there. But it's going to require her to become a better off-ball player, because right now, a lot of her turnovers come from, like, she just gets swarmed, she gives it up, and then doesn't move enough. And so the possession becomes 4-on-4, which is fine, but it's not working for the Fever and all the time. So I think that is her ceiling to me. Her defense will never be supremely awesome. Her passing is obviously sensational, but some work to do to get there, as with every rookie.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think, there are a lot of contingencies that have to come and play here that will kind of alter that as we go. And coming up, we'll talk, more about her, of course, but more so about the expectations going forward for the Fever as a whole and how they've looked so far. We'll break that all down after this. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it is easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. And now I'm going to talk to you about one more thing, one of my favorites, because my New Year's resolution was to cut back on sugar, and Magic Spoon makes that easier and more delicious than ever. I absolutely love Magic Spoon's variety pack because it has 4 flavors that I can cycle through every single morning. Those 4 flavors are cocoa, fruity, frosted, and peanut butter, and they are all so delicious. It has 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and 4 to 5 grams of net carbs, and it is only 140 calories per serving. It's high protein, has 0 grams of sugar. It's keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, and soy-free, and I love to eat the fruity flavor right when I wake up every morning because it is really just so good. Be sure to go to magicspoon.com/lockedon to grab a variety pack for yourself and try it today, and be sure to use our promo code LOCKEDON at checkout to save $5 off your order. And Magic Spoon is so confident in their products that it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason at all, they will refund your money with no questions asked. Remember to start your day off right with a delicious bowl of high-protein cereal at magicspoon.com/lockedon and use the code LOCKEDON to save $5 off. Thank you, Magic Spoon, for sponsoring this episode. All right, back with Tony East, and we're going to talk about the expectations for the Fever as a whole heading into this season. I know we talked about Caitlyn's expectations and if she's maybe met them, but the Fever are 1-6. They just got, their first win the other night against LA on the road. Where were your expectations for the Fever heading into this season to start?
Yeah, I thought they'd be, and this was in my season preview, like it would require them to defend at the level they hoped to make the playoffs. And I think that was lower than a lot of people's expectations for them. But, I know that this team could score. Like, you were there in camp. You saw their preseason games. Like, even in the regular season, they've been in the 80s all the time. They could score with anybody. They cannot guard very well at all. And it was a big concern last year, and they tried to address it with some of their offseason additions, and their team's different. Like, they need to guard. So I thought, 7, 8, 9 range would be what I thought. And I don't know if you were one of them, but I told a lot of media people, privately before the season, like, look at their schedule. I think they're going to start 2-8, right? Like, it is brutally hard, both in terms of frequency of games and in terms of opponent and where in some cases. Like, I think they're reasonably going to start 2-8, and that's going to make people go, oh, is this team really that good? It's just that they've played a ridiculous schedule. So it's kind of hard to like compartmentalize all this. Like, no one looks at 1-6 and is like, they're doing great. They're meeting expectations, right? And like, they have not defended well yet. That has to me been their biggest problem, is they have every game, specifically in a special, like the entire game of their first couple games, they just were atrocious for long stretches defensively. And they're trying to bake that into their identity, getting stops and running. But, in terms of like specifically game by game, right? Like losing to the Liberty and Sun twice and losing on the road to the Storm and Aces. Yeah, that's all like justifiable results for who the Fever are. Like, I would consider their record right now about what I expected. They beat the Sparks, and then their next 3 to round out that first 10 is Sparks at home, Sky at home, and then Seattle at home. So, like, maybe they'll do better than I said going 2-8, but, like, they aren't that far off to me of what I thought. The problem is that I was a little lower on them than the consensus, but I still think they can push for that because, one, they've made a lot of strides. A couple of their losses have been close games recently, outside of getting completely smoked by the Aces last night. And 2, they're just getting better every day as a young team. That's just naturally how it's going to go. So, Fascinating team. I think their expectations were too high from a lot of people, but for me personally, especially if their defense gets better, I kind of think they're on track, which is weird to say about a 1-16.
Right. I was going to say, do you think it's more of an adjustment period right now and they'll get there eventually? I hate the ceiling thing again, but where do you see them ending up at the end of the season? If you had to make your prediction right now, we're putting it on the record. Where do you think they're going to end up at the end of the season?
I mean, the thing is, like, a couple teams that I thought, when I'm ranking the teams that, they're going to be top 8 or 9 or whatever, it's like Chicago's been better than I thought already. And, so maybe it's not as easy to just say what I originally thought. Like, that doesn't matter. I have to use new information. So I still probably say about the same spot. I will say that, like, their defensive level has concerned me a lot this year. Like, I thought they'd have more stretches where they looked at least pretty capable on that end. And maybe it's just that they've had trial by fire with their opponents so far. I'm not going to kill them for not being able to stop Brianna Stewart and NaLyssa Thomas. Like, no team can stop those players, but they've got to guard better. So I kind of feel like their ceiling is not as, even when I said I thought they were going to finish 7th, 8th, or 9th, like, I would have had their ceiling in the 4 or 5 range. I don't think I'd have it that high anymore. I'd probably have it closer to 6th. And the top of the league looks really good. And they haven't hit the level they need to on defense yet. But again, they're young and have had a brutal schedule. Like, after this road trip just ended, right? Their next 3 are at home. Then they play New York on the road. And then their schedule eases up significantly through, like, the end of June, right? So I think by the end of June, they'll look stable and have a decent record and be a team that makes sense to everybody. But they've got to get better defensively to get there. And I think their ceiling kind of requires them to guard somebody. And they haven't done that yet.
Okay, Tony, congratulations. You have been promoted. You are now the GM of the Indiana Fever. You're now the GM. What are you giving them right now? Whether it's a specific player you have in mind or whether it's just a need that they need to fill, maybe it is that the defense that you were talking about. What are you doing for the Indiana Fever?
Man, I mean, it's strange because to me it's a lot of, like, connectivity stuff. Like, someone gets beat, and this happens too much, right? So that alone could be where you start, is that players are just getting beat on the perimeter. But it feels like a lot of time when they have to rotate behind the play or, like, cover for someone else's mistake or all that kind of stuff, they just don't do that well or correctly. Or when they do it, they give up something else because they're overcommittal. And the answer to that is just time and coaching and practice and all that. And I think they've practiced 0 times since the season started. You wrote about that, right? Like, they haven't had a chance. They've played every other day. A lot of them have had flights in between. Like, you just can't. And that's not an excuse. Like, you still need to be better at this stuff. It's a professional basketball league. But, what do you give up? Time? Can you trade a draft pick to guard better? Like, obviously, if you get a better defending player in, yes. But, it's harder to say that it's personnel. Like, they acquired some good defenders, but they're still young and playing rookies. So I definitely think they don't have the personnel to be better than maybe, like, the 8th best defense. So the thing I'm giving up or trading for or prioritizing or whatever the right word is, if I'm the GM, like, I'm locking in defense every practice. I know they do it a lot. Like, you've seen it. They go through tape and all that, and they work on it. Clearly, every team practices, right? This isn't like breaking the bank or telling anybody anything new. It's just they have to be better at it. They have to find a way to be a better communicating team. And I don't know exactly what that's going to require or what that requires me giving up as Fagbenle done in this scenario. But
you don't have to give up a thing. This is you're not giving up a thing today, Tony.
Yeah. So, in future summers, it's given up. I think next year right away they need to be willing to spend a lot or to trade for good defensive players. Like, with you have Clark, Boston, and whoever remains of your young core. Like, you're going to be able to score with just that, right? They've just got to get defenders in the door. And so next year, once I know who fits with who, like, oh, look, wow, a really fast rim running big with Caitlyn Clark's a fantastic player. Like, Temi's looked awesome, right? Like, that's the kind of stuff you thought would be key for the Fever this season. And so once all that is sorted out and they know all that, they can really make their decisions. Next summer, they can make their defensive decisions and all that. So that's when I'm giving stuff up, whether it's money picks, whatever.
I like it. You did it. You did a great job as the GM. You're taking that hat off now. I'm demoting you. You were promoted for a short minute. You're demoted. You're just regular Tony East now. I'm sorry. But now we are going to get into a game of stock up, stock down right now. So I guess how this works is I'm going to say either stock up or stock down, and you're going to give me whether a player or something they've improved upon, something that kind of fits that mold of stock up, stock down, right? Stock.
You got it.
So we'll start with stock up, and it could be one, it could be three things or players that come to your mind. What would you say is the biggest personnel or something that has brought their stock up so far?
You've heard me watch games. You sat near me enough. Temi!
I know.
It's Temi! Oh, man, she has been so good. Like, maybe this is my own ignorance, but she's been out of the league for 5 years. Like, when I projected my cuts, I had her close to the line. Like, I didn't know if she'd make the team. And the first practice, I think you were standing like 2 feet from me. She made this defensive stop with the bench group and just like roars from the bottom of her chest. And everybody's going crazy. I'm like, whoa. And then she's running the floor really well. I'm like, okay, she's good. She should be on the team. And now she's starting. It's been 7 games, right? Like, not only is she good, like she's getting double-doubles and scoring and doing this, she is so far a brilliant fit with Caitlyn, right? And that matters a lot for the Fever as they project long term. And she's a vet, so like you could have timeline questions. You figure that out later. Her stock's gone way up. Like she's been so good for this team, already over 20 minutes a game, averaging 10 and 5 already, shooting well. And the thing about her stats is her first 2 or 3 games, she could not make a layup at all. And now she looks awesome finishing around the basket. Huge stock up for me with her, and huge stock down for myself for being ignorant to how good she is because she's been out of the league for 5 years. I was wrong. She is great and a great fit for this team.
I love it. I love it. And, I feel the same way. She would be my first answer in this one as well. And I think you even asked Caitlyn this, and Caitlyn talked about just how helpful it's been to have her around as a leader, as just a presence of helping her. So I think she brings so much on the court, right? But it's also what she brings off the court. And I think that's just invaluable, right? So other than yourself, who is maybe a stock down moment here? And maybe not a big stock down, or just someone who you need to see a little bit more from right now to feel confident.
Well, my first stock down is actually not because they haven't performed how I thought, but just because they haven't played. And that's Grace Berger. And I think Grace should be playing, to be clear. I think Grace should be one of the team's 4 guards that plays every game. She's good at a lot of the stuff they need. She's such a steady hand. She doesn't make mistakes a lot. And like her ceiling is different than other players because of the way she plays. But I think they need her to play. To be clear, the reason her stock is down is she hasn't played. Like I don't know what to make of her right now compared to what I thought before the season. And I thought she'd be in the mix to play every game. And she's played 33 minutes total through 7 games. Maybe this isn't a Grace Berger stock down. Maybe this is Grace Berger's situation stock is down. That's maybe more accurate because it's not her. She doesn't play bad. Like she's shooting 70% this year. She hasn't missed yet, right? Like when she's played, she's been good. So I guess it's situation. Why is Grace Berger not playing the stock down? The stock down should be get her minutes. Figure that out because she's clearly good. She can score from areas that they don't have anyone who's very threatening from, and they're like working on these skills all the time. She's a steady hand, does not turn it over very much. To be clear, she has 1 turnover per game in her 3 appearances. I'm playing Grace Berger more, and so it's not a stock down for Grace Berger. So maybe I phrased that poorly. It's a stock down for her situation, and I think the Fever need to get that fixed.
I'm upset because I was going to ask you why isn't she getting more minutes? I'm like, you're our expert here. I need to hear it from you because it's all over Twitter, right? Like the discourse on Twitter is all Grace Berger, at least on my side of Twitter.
The problem is you're caring about the Twitter discourse.
I know.
Here's the thing though, but in this case, I agree with them. Like the discussion always becomes this: who do you not play if you're going to play Grace? Right? They're starting 3 guards right now. And Christy Wallace starting has been a good decision. Right? Christy Wallace's ball handling and good enough shooting as the 3 hasn't fallen, but like from the field in general has been pretty good in terms of moving the ball and how the starting 5 has looked. So that's 3 guards. And then Erica Wheeler plays and sometimes Lexi Hall plays, but like Katie Lou's going to play every game at the 3 too. So you got to take one of them out to play Grace, probably. And you could expand the rotation, I suppose, but then one of those players is playing less. I think you could make the case to play Grace a little more and Erica a little less, but she's such a key vet. She's a steady hand. There's a lot of like show and tell going on with her, right? Very valuable for Caitlyn. So that's hard to do. And all the rest of the guards have been good or deserve minutes too. So that's where it's hard is they just like have a lot of ball handlers. So it's not an easy answer because someone else's stock is then falling by default.
I was gonna say, is it stock down for having too much talent? Is that our stock down?
Hold on. I don't know if a 1 in 6 team can have too much talent either. It's just like it's a kind of hard reality to strike. That like everybody gets what's happening. Not true. People have questions about why she's not playing, but like, when you go through the exercise that we just did, everybody kind of gets why the situation is what it is. People just have different ideas of who should be playing more. And my opinion is that Grace Berger should be playing every game. So I don't know how they figure that out, but I guess so I answered the question wrong. Her stock is not down. The guard room situation of minutes is where I have questions.
Absolutely fair. And now I'm going to give you a freebie, a wild card. You can pick either a stock up or a stock down. Who or what are you thinking?
All right, I'll do a stock up on a very specific side of the court. NaLyssa Smith's offense. Ooh, she looks good on that end of the floor. She has been scoring from everywhere, off the dribble, off of offensive rebounds, from three. I had some questions about specifically that end of the floor with her this year, playing with Aliyah and Caitlyn. Like, naturally, she's going to have different touches, maybe not less or more, just different. And I'll never forget it. It's baked in my brain. She played an AU 2 years ago and was amazing. And I hopped on the Zoom and I said, what do you think unlocked this for you? She said, I played center. Can't play center on the Fever. So how is her natural skill in the paint going to evolve and allow her to fit in? Her offense, to me, has been very good this year. Hit half her shots, making her not taking a lot, but still taking about a 3 a game and making enough of them. Rebounding has been sensational. Obviously, I think even she would say her defense needs to be better, but stock up NaLyssa Smith's offense and how well-rounded I think she's playing on that end of the floor. I think that's significant for the Fever, that she's shown that she can fit with those two players. That said, my first stock up was a different post player who already is playing in the starting five instead of NaLyssa Smith. So a very interesting problem that they have there.
What are you going to do? I'm going to give you one more. It's going to be a little different. I'm going to give you a player, and you are going to tell me if they are stock up or stock down for you. Okay. We're going to go Aliyah Boston because I think there was a lot of kind of unwarranted, maybe some would say warranted, but a lot of hatred towards her that I think was unwarranted for the first few games of this season. She showed off the last couple. She had some good moments in their win, of course. What would you say? Is her stock up or stock down right now?
Anyone going the hatred route is too far. Look, Aliyah's a perfectionist too, and she will tell you that in 3 of her first 6 games, going 2 for 6, 2 for 7, and 5 for 15 is not good enough, right? Like, if you said this before the Sparks game, my answer is stock down immediately. Just hasn't had the impact that I expected. Like, I told people, the same people that I thought that start 2-8, that I thought Aliyah would be their best player this year. And in their win over the Sparks, she was awesome in that game. And I think that some of that was her making shots. She made 8 in that game. That's still her season high. And I think some of that is the Fever kind of reprioritizing how they've been a lot better at these guard actions with Caitlyn plus Kelsey or Caitlyn plus Christy or whoever, working that in with how a post player can be involved and be a part of that and making it a 3-player action, even if Aliyah's just around the play, right? So she was more involved. She took 14 shots. She took 14 shots against the Aces last night too and looked pretty good. So she's been much better recently. And I wasn't concerned because it was only 6 games to start her second season. Like, I'm not going to do what people on the internet are doing. But I don't think she played to the level that I expected or that she expected, which is a key designation here, in those first 6 games, and is now rounding into form. So to answer the question, obviously 6 out of 8 games is more than half the season. I would say stock down, but I'm not worried about it at all. I think that they have realized that they need to get her more involved and figure out how she can be at her best, because she wasn't finishing plays at the level that she expects of herself. Her defense was just a tick below what I expected. That's gotten better too. I think she will be better going forward, especially with some days off for this team to rest, recalibrate. I think she will be a lot better, but like a couple of those first 3 games, I don't know if she hit the level she wanted or if the Fever integrated her the way they would have hoped.
I think what happened is that she's just so in tune with Caitlyn Clark, and she took on that rookie mindset of having to adjust when you start a new season. I think they're just so connected right now that's what happened.
Yeah, I don't even know. Like, she and Caitlyn have a very weird reality to me of their whole life just stomping every opponent in their path, right? Mm-hmm. And you get to the pros and you're not the best players and you lose more than you've ever lost. NaLyssa Smith even has this. Like, recalibrating emotionally what that takes and how you get better to get through that is such a new thing. So Aliyah dealt with it last year, and now this year faced new expectations and is working through that and is clearly getting better. And Caitlyn's working through that. And that's just like an extra thing that I think is so interesting about young players in the W, and specifically back-to-back number 1 picks. And I'll probably cite forever the Storm drafted Lauren Jackson and Sue Bird, and we're not great right away. And the Aces had their number 1 picks in a row, and we're not great right away. And all those teams turned out to be sensational at their peaks. So I have no concern over the Fever start or what this season will look like, even though I think a lot of people look at the 1-6 record and the up and down games from some of their players and go, I think they're right on track, even though it's just weird to say right now.
That is a wonderful way to cap off our show today. Thank you so much, Tony, for joining me. But before we go, I got to tell you guys that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day, with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. And of course, tune in. We are here 5 days a week talking to you about all things women's basketball. And I will see you again soon, Tony. It was great catching up with you and hearing all about the Fever. And I'm sure I'll see you soon at a game. Thanks.